In the dusty hills of Galilee, beneath the fierce blue sky that watched over the carpenter's village of Nazareth, the story of one family quietly unfolded. Before the miracles, before the cross and the crown of thorns, there was a household, ordinary in sight yet destined to bear an extraordinary mystery. Within it lived Mary and Joseph, the young woman chosen by heaven and the craftsman who carried the weight of divine purpose with silent resolve. And among the children that filled their home were the brothers of Jesus, James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas, as named in the Gospels of Matthew 13:55 and Mark 6:3. They grew in the same narrow streets, under the same sun that beat upon the stones of Nazareth. Their laughter mixed with the hammering in their father's workshop. They played in the dust, fetched water, and learned the ancient prayers of Israel from their mother's lips. To them, Jesus was first a brother before he became a mystery. His quietness, his patience, his gaze that seemed to see beyond the visible, these things set him apart, yet at that time they could not grasp why. The others would tease him as brothers do, but there was a reverence, a sense that even their jesting should tread softly around him. In those early years, the brothers did not yet know that the man they called brother would one day be called Messiah. For the world had not yet heard his voice over the waters nor seen his hands heal the blind. But within the walls of that humble home, heaven and earth had already met. As the years passed, the household of Joseph became a living testimony to ordinary labor. The boys learned to plane wood, to cut stone, to trade in the markets of Sepphoris, a city near Nazareth that hummed with Roman life. The region was a crossroads of empire and tradition, Latin tongues mingling with Aramaic speech, soldiers marching through vineyards, and synagogues whispering ancient hope. Jesus, now a young man, worked beside his brothers. Yet his eyes often turned toward the horizon as though listening for a call only he could hear. When he departed from Nazareth to seek baptism at the Jordan, the family must have watched with uneasy wonder. For news spread quickly across Galilee that John the Baptizer, a prophet in camel's hair, had spoken of a greater one to come. When Jesus was baptized and a voice declared, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Matthew 3:17. The brothers heard of it from others, perhaps incredulous, perhaps quietly stirred. But when Jesus returned and began teaching in the synagogues, the town murmured, "Where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas?" Matthew 13:54-56. The townspeople's doubt mirrored that of his own kin. Even his brothers did not believe in him then, John 7:5. It was a bitter divide, faith and blood, miracle and misunderstanding. For they could not see beyond the veil of familiarity. To them he was still the one who had shared their bread, not the one who would multiply it for thousands. The ministry of Jesus carried him far from home, through Galilee, Samaria, and Judea, gathering crowds that pressed close to touch the hem of his garment. Yet word of his fame returned to his family, not always in reverence. Some said he was a prophet, others whispered madness. "He is beside himself," some declared, Mark 3:21. When his mother and brothers came seeking him, unable to reach him through the throng, he looked toward the multitude and said, "Who is my mother or my brothers?" And stretching his hand toward his disciples, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." Mark 3:31-35. Those words must have stung his kin. They revealed a new kind of family, one not bound by blood but by faith. Yet even in their distance, the brothers remained part of the unfolding story. For no house divided by disbelief can remain untouched by grace. In the shadows of his growing fame, they watched from afar. They saw the healings, heard the parables, felt the stir of the crowds that whispered Messiah. But they also saw the danger rise, the priests' unease, the Roman suspicion, the path toward a cross none yet dared to name. Jerusalem was crowded that final week. The brothers of Jesus, perhaps among the pilgrims, might have heard the uproar when their brother entered the city, riding on a donkey as people cried, yet the same voices would later shout, "Crucify him!" The city of David turned against its son. When the hour came and Jesus was arrested, the Gospels fall silent about his brothers. Perhaps they hid. Perhaps they stood at a distance, paralyzed by grief and disbelief. The cross rose upon Golgotha, and the sky darkened. Mary stood near, but none of his brothers are mentioned. Yet absence does not mean indifference. Silence is often the language of sorrow. Then came the morning when the stone rolled away. The tomb was empty, and rumors of resurrection spread like wildfire. In the early days after the resurrection, Scripture gives us a glimpse, a single luminous thread. Then he appeared to James. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15:7. That moment changed everything. The brother who once doubted became a believer, a witness, and later a pillar of the early church. From disbelief to devotion, James emerged as the shepherd of Jerusalem. In Acts 15, he presides over the council that decides the fate of Gentile believers. He is no longer the skeptic from Nazareth, a man of prayer. Joseph, Simon, and Judas, less is written of them, yet tradition holds that they too became followers and missionaries of the risen Christ. Judas, also called Jude, is credited with the Epistle of Jude, warning against false teachers and reminding believers to contend for the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints. Jude 1:3. Simon is remembered in some traditions as a missionary and martyr. The family, once divided by doubt, became bound by faith. Their story mirrors the arc of humanity itself, resisting the divine until confronted by its undeniable truth. Centuries turned their names into symbols. James became a saint, Jude the patron of lost causes, their memory woven into the fabric of Christian devotion. Yet behind these titles lie real men, shaped by the dust of Galilee, sons of a carpenter, witnesses to both ordinary life and eternal mystery. In their journey, we find the reflection of every believer, those who wrestle with doubt before finding faith, who stumble before they see. The brothers of Jesus remind us that the divine often hides in the familiar, that the sacred may dwell beside us, unseen, until revelation breaks the heart open. And so the story of the brothers does not end in ancient Nazareth or even in Jerusalem. It continues wherever belief is born out of disbelief, wherever love transforms kinship into brotherhood not of blood, but of spirit. In the end, the family of Jesus stands as a mirror of the human condition, caught between earth and heaven, disbelief and devotion, kinship and calling. Their story invites us to look again at the ordinary faces around us and ask what holy mystery might dwell there unseen. For every believer begins in some way as the brother who did not believe, until grace appears and names them family once more. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell. More Bible figures await.